Welcome to the Pro Design Builder Podcast, the show where professionals and entrepreneurs share their stories, strategies, and secrets to building a thriving business and a successful life. I'm Sam, your host, as we dive deep into the world of life experiences and entrepreneurship. Before we get going, I would like to thank our sponsor, the Pro Design Builder, which is a coaching and consulting firm for real estate investors who want to build spec homes and new development projects. The Pro Design Builder is not just about building a business, it's about building a vision and a life by design. Also, other sponsor is the Tampa Nest Collab, which is a real estate incubator for real estate investors. There's professionals in several different areas, like creative finance, short sales, and development. If you would like to join, there'll be a link in the description. All right. So, uh, as you know, foster care is a mission that's near and dear to my heart. And I've fostered 5 kids. I've adopted 2 kids. I'm currently fostering one. The mission in foster care is never over. If you ever feel led to give, there'll be a link in the description for the Patreon. Some of the things that our initiative is used for is purchasing beds for foster parents and adoptive parents. Also, we provide meals as the primary cook in the house. I appreciate it so much when someone brings a meal over. There's so many things that we don't have to worry about on that day. So we want to provide meals. Also, we are big on making sure that the family is sound. So providing an additional date night to foster families, making sure that they are in an environment where they are loved is something that's truly important. And we've seen the fruit from all of that because our fam team provides all of these things for us as well. So grateful for that. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest for today. My brother Charles Long, which is the director of Marcon Forensics, which is a structural engineering firm. We will jump into a bunch of things that they do, which a lot of people are not exposed to. He's a father, he's a brother, he's a friend, he's part of my Bible study. He's a guy that's very, very sharp, very bright. Definitely grateful to call him, my friend. So Charles Long.
Hey man, thank you so much for having me on here. I think this is awesome. What you're doing, this platform, really cool, and I'm just really glad that I got to be a part of it. So
Yeah,
really,
sounds great. So just tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about what you do.
yeah, man. So I'm originally from the DC area. Was born and raised there. Spent the first 18 years just kind of up in Northern Virginia. After high school, made my way down to South Florida, went to Florida Atlantic University, where I got my degree in civil engineering, specializing in structural. I've got, amazing wife, for your high school sweethearts. We both grew up in the Northern Virginia area. We both came down here. We've got now 3 beautiful kids. We just added a new addition. So little Micah, he's 6 months. We have Chase, who is a little beast. He's 3, and Skylar, which is the queen that runs the house. She's 6. Beautiful, beautiful family. Just love them to death. And basically, got into this engineering thing, found myself into doing some forensic work, and I just fell in love with it. So really, I tell people, I was like, I live a boring life because it's just daily, it's the same thing. I'm either here hanging with the kids, or, kind of out in the field doing inspections and stuff. But yeah, that's just kind of me in a nutshell. There's really nothing very special there, but it's I love it.
Yeah, so the families hang out together a lot.
Yes,
Obviously, I have 4 kids, and they are around the same age. But then when we get together, everybody's so well behaved, which is actually, and it allows the adults to actually talk.
Yes, I love it. I love
You
it.
know, so there's like 7 kids bouncing around the house, but it's, you know, generally
Exactly.
pretty peaceful.
Yeah, man. When people hear that, they're like, "Oh man, I bet that's crazy." I'm like, actually, it's not.
It's not.
Just
It works.
it just
Yeah.
works, and
Yeah.
we're able to hang out and enjoy it. And it's always a great time, man.
Yeah,
Always.
for sure, for sure, for sure, for sure. So, a thing that we like to do is we like to go back and, you know, I ask everybody, you know, what were they like as a kid, and then were there early signs that the path that you would head? What were you like as a kid?
Yeah. Like most little boys, I was rambunctious, and I put that energy in sports. So I think a lot of what kind of shaped my mentality and how I kind of approach things today, it started early with like competition. It was early, like little league basketball, football. And from there, I just loved, competing. I loved, trying to challenge myself. And that would kind of like establish a bit of a drive. And it was kind of innately in my parents too. Like they kind of had a similar background. And so a lot of what we did growing up was kind of bouncing from practices and games and traveling here and there. And I have a younger brother, younger sister. They're also heavily into sports. And so even within the home, everything was just like hyper competitive. And so there was this natural drive in all of us. And I kind of like took that and translated it a bit to like the education too. Parents were like really hardcore about like trying to maximize your potential within the classroom. They did not play games, man. I'm
Mhm.
telling you, they did not play games. They did not like seeing them C's. They were all right with them B's. They were really pushing because they were like, you can do better.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so they challenged us in that way. And through that, it kind of like took that same competitive spirit and just applied it to the classroom. And um, as far as like the path that kind of like got me pointed towards the engineering thing, it happened pretty early. My parents were buying their first home, and it was about a week before we were supposed to move. And it was exciting. Like all I'd known is like rentals and stuff and
Yeah.
place that you can just like plant some roots. This is ours. Everybody was excited. And like I said, the week before we moved in, the house caught on fire,
Oh wow.
which was like tragic. I was like, oh my gosh, of course, like this would be our luck. And but there's a silver lining, like the way that God works. There is a silver lining. So despite the fact the house caught on fire, insurance kind of got involved and all that. And when they rebuilt the house, it allowed us to completely reconfigure it. And so we were able to like say, hey, we're not gonna build that wall back. Let's just change the layout of the house a bit. We really made it our own, which was really cool. So when we moved in, I asked myself, like, who says that it's okay, like, to move back in this house? Like, who determines if it's safe or not? And so I kind of started digging a little bit. I remember asking my parents and my dad and go look it up. He could have told me. He was like, go look it up. So I was like, okay. So I'm sitting there digging, and I found the engineering. It was kind of like the forensic thing. And so I started looking into that. I was like, I think I want to do that. And I was probably, I don't know, I was pretty young. Couldn't have been older than 10. And from there, I had opportunities in middle school. They had a couple of like these, like a little elective classes where you can, kind of build stuff. They kind of introduce like CAD a little bit. And so anytime I had an opportunity to take like a class that was anywhere within the space, I was like, let me just see, let me check it out. And anytime I had opportunities to talk to people who might have been in the space, I just asked questions. And the more and more that I got exposed to, the more I was like, this is it. Like, this is what I want to do. And so by the time I got to high school, it was already set. Like I knew eventually I was going to be doing this. So yeah, that's kind of like the path that kind of got me here today. Oh, I lost audio. I think you're muted. No. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Hmm. There we go.
Boom.
I
Can
got
you
you
hear
now.
me? Yes.
Yeah.
Something very simple. No, I was saying a funny story. You mentioned your parents and your report card, right? This is a
Oh,
story that I never so you weren't allowed to bring home C's, right?
mm-mm.
So all right, so my parents, they were on us about our grades, but a little backstory about me, because I came into the country young. I fell behind in school very early. I was in dropout prevention. So my grades were terrible, like terrible, 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 right? And as a matter of fact, when my report card would come out, I would get the report card, go in the back of the house, I would dig a hole, I would, I would tear it up, I would wet it, and then I'd bury it. I'd bury the report card, right? And then they're not finding that one. So then my parents would ask me, and she was like, "Oh, where's your report card?" I was like, "Oh, I don't know. They didn't give it to me." So they kept asking. My parents worked, and they had to work. They had to consistently work. So the only way that they could get the report card is if they came to the school. So
Oh
they
no.
had to come to the school
Oh.
because it was I was struggling. So they
Yeah.
had to come to the school and get the report card for them to actually see the bad news. So needless to say, it was not good for me once that happened.
Yeah. You already take a bad situation and it's like, oh, it's gonna get
Exactly. And I was committed to it, and they were gonna have to work for that report card.
yes,
But you can't do that now. You can just log on and just see your kids' grades and know exactly where they're at.
for sure.
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah, man. That's probably
yeah. So, similar to you, you had this experience where the fire happened, and then you had to redesign. They had to redesign this home, and then you started asking questions about, structural. For me, I was an art kid. That was, like, I would say art was my first love,
mhm.
and I was an art kid. So I'd be the kid sitting on the chair, and the fifth graders would be drawing me. So I was an art model, and then then I was an artist. And what that did for me was gave me the ability to see things that are not present and be able to draw it and scale it and stuff like that. So then now, what that translates to is walking into a space and understanding and knowing, how to redesign a space to make it its highest and best use.
Yeah.
So it's funny how we pick up certain small things from our childhood, and then it carries over to something something greater. So
Yeah.
who would you say was your biggest influence growing up?
Uh, I it would it would 100% be now. This is a tough question because I would say my dad primarily.
Hmm.
Um, but realistically, you know, it was kind of like a tandem effort, like between him and my mom. They
Hmm.
had this unique balance to themselves. Like the things that my dad was really good at drawing out in me might not necessarily have been my mom's strengths, but the
Hmm.
things that she was able to draw out of me wasn't my dad's, and it was kind of like this yin and yang between them. That honestly, I know I experienced it, and I got to witness it through my siblings, and I'm 10 years older than my sister.
Okay.
Definitely old enough to be aware to see like how my mom might come into a situation where she could really have some strong influence and it would be a positive result. Or like she might not necessarily have the strength to do it. So then my dad would step in areas where she couldn't fill in the gaps. And so kind of watching that, I've reflected on that in the past. And it's like those two had a really good yin and yang to them for like how they wanted to raise up their kids and how they wanted to draw them out in them.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful because it's funny. I remember having a conversation when I got to college. I think it was my second year. And, you hit a point in college where there's like a shift where you recognize like, I ain't a kid anymore. Like,
Correct.
I'm an adult. And you might have that realization based on maybe a certain decision you make or just certain lifestyle changes and you're kind of adopting things. You're going, am I an adult now? Like, wow, I'm proud of myself. So I had one of those moments and I remember calling my parents and just going like, thank you. I see now looking back at like all the things that you were kind of holding me accountable for, like what you were trying to do. I see it now. Like I see the picture. Back then I was just like annoyed. Like, why are you always on me about the clothes being folded up in the chair? And it wasn't about the clothes. It was just about discipline and all this other stuff. And I now had that, I could see the full picture. Like it wasn't about that. It was more about character development and they were trying to draw something out of me. And so I had the opportunity to be like, hey, thank you. I see it now. So that's kind of in a tricky way answering your question because you said one person, but to me, that was like kind of one and the same, just because it works so well together.
Yep. No, that's great. I would say I had a similar thing. I would say my dad, but I had this similar thing. But I'll tell you a story, and then I'll go backwards. Right. So I remember being a freshman in college, right? And I'm downstairs doing the laundry, blah, 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 taking care of it. And then there's this kid that walks he walks in, you can see him, he's petrified, he's shaking like this. He's like, uh, how do you do this? Right? I'm just like, oh my gosh, right? So I tell him, I walk him through, I say, dump the clothes in the laundry. He dumps it in. Like, go over there, go get some detergent. He go get the detergent. I'm like, go ahead and pour it in. So I walk him through this thing, right? Yeah. And he finally gets the laundry going. You can see that he was hit with a lot of relief.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. But I bring this story up because it was funny because he was so unprepared. He was ill-equipped. Right. For me, I've been doing my laundry for a very long time. Right. Every football game I had to make sure I get my own laundry done, go to the laundromat, get it done. And, even for us and very, very, very early on, washing stuff by hand. So I got the basics down, and I wouldn't have had that unless I had this, instilled in me through my parents.
Exactly.
So, there's a lot of things that, I, even in college, with some of my teammates in the summer, I'm like making breakfast. Right. And, one of the dudes go, how did you know how to do this, man? And then it blew my mind. Yeah. It blew my mind. I'm like, I've been making breakfast since I was 8. Like, I've been making eggs since I was 8 years old, right?
Yeah, I'm like, dude, you don't like to eat? I was told if you like to eat, you better learn how to cook.
Exactly.
That's shocking.
Yeah, that is. But it tells you a dichotomy and how your parents prepare you for certain things and how certain people are not prepared. So it's this yin yang sort of thing. So was there any defining moment for you, as a child that you feel like shaped you?
I don't know if there was a single thing. I think that, growing up in Winchester, it was such a small town. And given the fact that like it was so small and there really wasn't a whole heck of a lot to do. And we would venture into DC here and there. And I guess if I had to pick a couple of things, like one thing that kind of stands out, and it wasn't one particular situation, but anytime that we kind of left the area and we kind of got to see life outside of, this little sleepy town and got to see, what the rest of the world might look like. It kind of like intrigued me to like, hey, I want to go explore a bit. I want to see life outside of what Virginia has to offer. And part of like what my parents did is for a few years, they, along with my grandparents, they tried to establish these family trips just for like obviously to decompress and enjoy time with one another, but also to like see things we've never seen before. And I remember us taking this trip that I'll never forget. I was in 4th grade, and we actually came to Florida, and it was one of the first legs of the trip. We stopped in Orlando. We did the Disney thing, which was cool. Then we made our way to Fort Lauderdale, and then my first time like being in South Florida. And I remember telling my dad, like, I'm going to live in Fort Lauderdale one day. And he was like, dude, if you want to, I mean, yeah, that's sure, make it happen. And it was just crazy. It was just so different. Everything was so different. Just culturally, seeing all these different types of restaurants and the different types of people. And then from there, we went to the Bahamas, which again, was the first time leaving the country and getting just to see how different it was from the U.S. And coming back, we stayed a few more days in Fort Lauderdale and we made our way back up. And I mean, everything about that trip just screamed like there's so much more than what Virginia has to offer. And honestly, the moment that I turned 18 and I got my acceptance into FAU, I was like, oh, I'm doing it. And I'm going to live in Fort Lauderdale one day. And it's funny because you fast forward and every time I have to go to Fort Lauderdale, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to go back to Fort Lauderdale again. I cannot wait to get back up to Boynton Beach. Like,
you got to start somewhere. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It is crazier. There is more going on, and then the older you get, you realize I don't want this much going on, right? No, but it's a beautiful place for sure.
Yes. But yeah, that's probably the thing. Like just being able to get out and see, and you go, man, I want to get out and explore a bit.
Yeah. So for me, I grew up here. I grew up in Fort Lauderdale. So I've always been a city boy. So because there is so much going on, there is so many options. Is when I went away for school, it was almost like there's nothing here for me. Like there's not enough going on. There's not enough, just so then, you get that urge. Plus I had family here. You get that urge to just come back to, the city life that which is fun, warm, nice and stuff like that. So,
yes.
So, all right. So, you told us about how you were, as a kid and, how the initial itch came with this fire and then this reconstruction and stuff like that. What was your early work life experience like?
Oh
yeah
My very first job I was a paper boy. So I was 12, I believe. And man, you want to talk about like being tossed into some real needing discipline. When I met with the guy who was going to give me the route, it was very to the point, very blunt. He was like, I need the papers to be delivered on time and intact. That was all. That was my direction. He didn't say anything else. And so he was like, the papers will be delivered on your front step at like 4 a.m. And you have until this time to make sure that the route's complete. Okay. It was the first time that I'm talking with an adult outside of like my father, who's just like, this is what you need to do. This is what I expect you to do. And go, basically. So I remember waking up at really early in the morning and just like rolling papers, rubber bands, praying that it wasn't going to be raining. Because if it was raining, it was an extra step. You had to put it in the sleeve. Gosh, I hated that. You wake up, you're like, I got to roll these papers. I got to put the bands on, and I got to throw it in the sleeve. And then during the winter, man, it's cold. Like you get out there on that route and it's like 6 a.m. and it's 15 degrees and you're like tossing these papers onto the stoops and stuff. And like, how many more houses we got? I got 40 more houses. So it was just like, but it was one of things, as you get into the routine, it was just like you become like this machine. And it's just like, okay, you know what? This ain't necessarily fun, but when that paycheck hit, I remember my first paycheck and being like, oh my gosh, I have my own money?
Yeah.
My own money? Look at all the stuff I could buy. And the paycheck was like,
yeah, minimal,
you
50
know,
bucks. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
But, you know, that kind of like, oh, okay, so this is what this work thing is about. And so from there, you know, I ended up leaving the route, and like my first, like, I guess, you know, go to work, be there all day, come back type thing was actually at a nursery. So they needed just some young guy to load up cars, basically. Yeah, trucks pulling up and they're buying 10 bags of mulch, or they need help loading a tree or something like that. And so it's just like on the intercom, you're like, hey, Charles, we need 20 bags loaded up. So it's just me like picking up stuff and throwing it in the back of the truck. And every now and again, they'd have me like work the cash register, and people would ask me like specifics, like, "Hey, do you know what the hydrangeas are?" And I'm like, "I don't even know what that is."
Yeah.
But yeah, those were two of the early jobs. Just anything to, you know, get out there and see what this whole work thing is about. And yeah, it was interesting because I think that nursery job I might have been 15. I think I just turned 15. So that was early for me.
So I had, I'll tell you about my two young business ventures, and then I'll tell you about my first job. So my first business, which was selling candy. So I went to the store. My mom had gave me some seed money, which is not a lot. It was probably just maybe $5. Yeah, but I bought a bag of these small chocolates or whatever. I think it was like Nestle Crunch and a bunch of other little stuff. It was very little, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the math worked out that they were probably about like 10 cents each.
Okay.
And then I put them in my backpack, and then I was selling for 25 cents at school. Right.
Look at that.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, I went, I sold out the first bag, and then, you know, I showed my mom, you know, she I think she took her seed money back. And then I took that and then I reinvested it again into, you know, and then I got 2 bags now. And then now I started selling candy, and then I was like the candy kid.
Okay.
Right. So, but that really showed me, you know, and it wasn't exchanging time for money. It was exchanging this need that kids had, right? Which was candy for money. So that was my first business venture. And then the second one, my wife calls me a traveling moo salesman. My mom was a seamstress, and she would make these moo-moos. If you don't know what moo-moos is, they're just like this little thing that it's like a sundress. But so I would go door to door, knocking on the door, asking these women if they want to buy moo-moos.
Okay.
And I did not like that particular job, but I did get a few sales. Okay. Right? Yeah, exactly. So it taught me how to sell and be a door to door. Right. So it's starting to open up that door. And then my first real job, I was 13, and I was a busboy at a restaurant, and then that was like real work.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But that taught me, you know, hospitality, understanding and learning how to serve. So I feel like every job provides you with an additional skill or additional experience to get to this next level. Right.
100%.
So, and then you could use all of it, all of that experience. It's not just about being a business owner or being a professional right away. You gotta get these soft skills, you know, leading up to it. So you know.
To piggyback off of that, my absolute favorite job that was non-engineering related. I worked there basically, I think it was about 2.5 years, 3 years. It was a John Deere dealership, and I basically would put together the new deliveries. So if they had a new tractor show up, if it was a new 0-turn mower, if it was a gator, it dropped off the pallet, and I would just take it off the pallet and I would put it together. And I never really got any real direction when it came to how to do it. So I'd be sitting in the garage, this huge shop, and I would just have my headphones in and just like figuring it out. Hey, I don't know how to do this, but between the manual and just trying to like simplify things as I walk through step by step. And it got to the point where as I would come across like a new mower, maybe something I hadn't set up before, I would be like, I'm not going to ask anybody for help. I want to see if I could do it by myself. And that kind of like self-challenge type thing, going like, I want to see, I'm faced with something I don't know and I need to figure it out. How can I navigate it and figure it out myself? I didn't realize that at the time. That's a hard skill that engineers, as an engineer, you use that daily, where you could find yourself in front of something and you're like, hey, this is new. How do I navigate this? And so trying to like actually developing the skills to be okay seeing something you're not seeing before and then figuring it out. That I had no clue at the time, but that was developing a skill I would use way down the line. So yeah, you're exactly right. All these little jobs and stuff, they definitely play a role.
This just kind of reminded me of something, because this is where this art skill kind of helped me out and figured out a lot of things. So when I became a contractor, I didn't come in through construction. I came in through investing, and because I am creative, I said to myself, I want to do custom work, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the reality of custom work is it's a lot of stuff you've just never done before,
Right?
Right? And you just have to figure it out somehow, right? It's easy. It's way easier now, right?
Yeah.
But in the beginning, you have to just kind of figure out how to bring all the pieces together,
Yeah.
right? And hit a home run. That's kind of like what you can't really afford not to hit a home run. So you got to bring all the pieces together and then hit a home run. So I remember in the beginning, which is something that has always helped me, is I just rely on experience in front of me, right? So if someone is more experienced, I just ask them a lot of questions. I kind of just take a little step back and just kind of let them lead. I realize that has been something is really important now when reading the book Who Not How, and allowing the experience to kind of lead and kind of take you that way. But that's invaluable experience in figuring things out.
Yes.
Because as a professional, especially as an engineer, there's a lot that you need to figure out, and you got to be spot on. You got to be spot on. Yeah. So,
right.
All right. So now so you told me about your work experience, and then now your real work begins. So this is take me to the time like right before you get licensed to practice. What was that like, and stuff like that?
Yeah. So I'm about to come out of school, and obviously the focus is land a job, land the job, land the job. And so I'm sending my resume out everywhere. Obviously, I've got a real passion for structural engineering, but beggars can't be choosers. I was like, if I land myself a land development job, a roadway job, I'll take whatever I can get, because again, it would be great experience either way. And eventually I'm sure I could transition, into structural. So as I'm applying to these jobs, the advisor at the time sent out an email saying, hey, you're on the list. You haven't signed up to take this, this licensing exam. And I went, what licensing exam? And it's the FE. You need to take that. You don't have to pass it, but you need to take it in order to graduate. And I went, oh, okay. So I signed up and I took the test, and I walked out of it going like, I think I passed, but I don't know. It doesn't matter. I checked the box. I get to graduate. Like, it's going to be great. And so I ended up getting my results within like 2 weeks, and I passed, which was like, okay, cool. And it still didn't register like what it is that I had done. And I didn't really, I guess, feel the weight of what I had just accomplished until I started working, because there were folks at the company that I ended up at that, they were actually still working to get through this exam. And they were explaining like, I've had to take it a couple of times, and it was a prereq in order to get your professional license. And so I went, and then it dawned on me. I was like, I didn't take that test serious at all. And I kind of just went through it. And when I got the license and it dawned on me, I was like, oh my gosh, I probably should have taken that way more serious than what I actually did. And so the way that it works with engineering is you get that license, and then you have to go through this apprenticeship period. 4-year period where you work underneath of a PE. And like that's kind of like the main goal as an engineer. You want to have a professional license because it allows you to sign and seal plans or reports, and basically it kind of gives you an extra feather in the cap, so to speak. There's a lot of work that you can go after by having that license. And so through that apprenticeship time, I worked at the time it's called Keith and Schnarr's. Now it's called K&S, doing roadway designs. And again, that wasn't necessarily, my wheelhouse, but it was a job. And so I worked there for about 2.5 years, and I was able to transition into their bridges division, which I was like, this is good. This is a stepping stone, because it was more structural related. I could actually work on the calculations and see some of the designs and stuff. And a lot of the structural firms at that time, the reason why I couldn't jump right into structural is because it's got a huge learning curve to it. Like, especially if you're looking to go to a design firm that kind of touches on all these different types of materials. A lot of these firms, you might find yourself working in one particular thing, and I wanted to be exposed to everything. And so because of that, it was very difficult to make a transition to one of them, because basically they wanted you coming in with experience. And I needed to find a way to get structural experience on my resume. So I did bridges for a while, was able to land a position at a smaller firm. It was just me and another engineer. And, he took a look at the bridge experience. He was like, I can work with that, which I'm incredibly and eternally thankful for. And what I loved about working with him, and this was United Professional Engineering, he touched everything. Like, I got exposed to doing designs related to wood, concrete, steel. We did building envelope stuff, waterproofing, stucco. We did windows, railings. He did everything. And why that was helpful, and why I think that, and I will touch on this more, obviously, as we kind of like get deeper into like the career stuff, but it feels like every job I ever had a purpose. There was a purpose. There was a reason why I was there. There's a reason why I was there for as long as I was. And being at United Professional Engineering, what it did was it really honed my skills as a structural engineer for a couple of reasons. One, I got exposed to all these different types of designs. But two, because it was me and just another guy, he was actually putting me out there to do the inspections and interface with the contractors and have meetings with the board members. It was like a trial by fire. So you want to talk about being uncomfortable and learning how to just be okay with being uncomfortable. Being faced with stuff is just like, I kind of know what I'm doing, but I don't really know. But I'm gonna grit my teeth and I'm gonna get through it. And so that really helped a lot. And I think it provided value. Like, if I look forward, like whenever I made a transition to another company, it really provided value. So when I finally sat down to take the PE, I did a lot of studying and prepping, because I wasn't going to make the same mistake I made when I took the first exam. This one, I was like, this is serious. This is a serious exam. I'm going to study for it. And I prepped and I prepped and I prepped. And when I went into the exam, it's structured like this. There's a morning session and there's an afternoon session. It's 80 questions. The morning session is like general engineering. It could be anything. The afternoon session, you have to select what you want your main focus to be. Mine was structural. And so in the test prep courses and everything, they kind of give you these strategies on how to beat the exam. And one of the items was, when you get the exam and you open up the pamphlet, don't just start immediately answering questions. Read all the questions and rank them. So if label them a 1, a 2, or a 3. If it's a 1, no brainer, I could do that without thinking. 2 might take a little bit of thinking, but I can figure it out. 3, I have no idea. And so I finished the morning portion, and I think I was like either the first or second person done. And there, at the break point, I went to the hotel restaurant and I grabbed a sandwich. As I'm sitting there, I'm going, I might have missed 1, maybe 2. I'm feeling really confident. And so the afternoon session comes and I do the same thing, open up the pamphlet. And the first question, I'm like, Arena, okay, 1. And the second question, okay, 1. And I do that. And I'm like, I think I passed this exam. And I didn't even finish it yet. I was like, I think I did it. And in that moment, I went, it's because I worked at United Professional Engineering. I had so much hands-on experience there that there wasn't anything in that exam that caught me off guard. or anything like that. There was a true purpose there. And so I really do appreciate the time that I spent working there, because it really developed all these areas that otherwise I would have struggled. I would have 100% struggled. So by embracing, those uncomfortable moments, and kind of like gritting my teeth through learning all these different calcs for different systems and stuff, because he was a difficult man to work with. He had high expectations. I mean, it was just me and him. So if things weren't getting done, he's looking at me like, Charles, what's going on, man? I got a business I'm running. I need to make this money. And so there were some tough times, and the lead up to the license and my experiences, working with him, it all had a purpose. And that's really the main thing. I know I'm kind of drawn on along a bit about it, but like, that's kind of the main takeaway.
No. This is really important. It's actually a big nugget here that I found out a long time ago, and I want to share for anybody that's diving into a new industry, or a new young professional, or a new business person. You talked about being in a smaller firm. I would say that's absolutely pivotal in being in a smaller firm, right? Because you kind of get to see everything, and that's something that I realized very early on in one of my first sales jobs. Is when it's a smaller firm, you get to see accounting and the steps that leads up to accounting, and you get to see the marketing department and get to see exactly what happens there. You get to see the delivery and sales, and you get to kind of see everything. But when you start out at a really big firm, it's just you're a number.
Yeah.
So, and you can't see all of the pieces. So there's no way for you to figure out how to get to this point and grow, right? So, being at a smaller firm, you get to be at the ground level, and you get to kind of see the incremental steps, and also you get to gain the experience a little bit faster, which, inevitably help to get your license and understand all of the steps necessary. So,
Yes.
mhm.
Exactly right, man.
So that was your early experience, and then now it sounds like this is right before you get licensed, or now you're getting licensed, and now you're establishing your first real forensic
Correct.
engineering position. So tell me a little bit about that.
So I ended up making a move to M2E. They're located up in West Palm Beach, and this was where forensics was kind of introduced to me. So M2E does a lot of like expert witness work. So they work with attorneys on construction defect cases, 558 claims. Essentially, the process is like, you have a building, there could be issues with, let's say, water intrusion, or let's say something with the facade or roof related things. And these attorneys will come in and be like, hey, you guys really should consider fixing this. And they'll go, well, in some cases, the developer or the contractor will be like, well, really, it's not on us. It's a maintenance issue. And so then they'll hire experts to come in and evaluate what these deficiencies are, and kind of get to the bottom of like, okay, what is the root cause, and who's at fault for this? And so M2E did a lot of that work. But what comes from it is, eventually, once the case settles, you got to fix these things. And so they were looking to add people to their team who has experience in what's called construction administration, where you're basically managing this restoration project. You kind of walk the client through the repairs. You develop repair specifications and drawings, and then you take those documents and you help the client bid out and select contractors and negotiate for them. And then once that takes place, you go through permitting, then you just do your regular inspections, making sure that what the work that's being done is compliant with the drawings and it's to code. And so I had a lot of that experience, but I didn't really have the forensic side, the litigation side of things. And so when I went to M2E, I was helping them a lot with the what we call CA work, the construction administration work. But eventually I was going to get exposed to this litigation side. And so when I started doing it, I realized that there was some finesse to this. Like, it was a lot different than the CA work. Like that, after a while, when you do like the construction administrative stuff, you're able to replicate a lot of the processes, just because you see similar things. And so the repair methodologies end up looking very similar, and then the outcomes are all similar. And then you work with the same players. Like, the industry has a lot of people in it, but it feels very small. So like, you get to know a lot of the contractors, a lot of these property managers and stuff. And so it's after a while, it's just like, okay, this is just you you're a machine now. You just crank it out, crank it out. With this litigation stuff, though, there's finesse because now you got these attorneys involved. The stakes are higher. You've got a lot of money on the line. And in some cases, the homeowners, the people who are in these units, they're suffering from these defects because it could be affecting their units. And so emotions are high. And you're kind of like this a balancing act between, I want to get to the bottom and the root cause of what is going on here. And I want to find the solution. But then they introduce this element of like, okay, but how do we allocate it? Like, who is at fault here? And is it an installation issue? Was it a design related issue? And you're pulled into these mediations and stuff. And you're trying to help them settle a case. And when that doesn't happen, you get pulled into depositions. And that's when I realized, okay, this is wildly different. You want to talk about a brand new animal. And I tell people that, this litigation work, if you're an engineer and you want to challenge yourself and you want to really test your mettle, like the Super Bowl's coming up. This is our Super Bowl. Like if you're going to go to trial as an expert, you are literally taking your license, your expertise, your experiences, and you're validating all the points and opinions in the case to support, whatever. So like if you're a plaintiff side, defendant, doesn't matter. But the cross-examination, and when you're sitting there and have an attorney trying to poke holes within your opinion and your methodologies and who you used and how you did your testing, it really tests the skills that you spent all these years developing. And you have to be able to communicate. And that's the other piece. Like there are a lot of engineers out there who are great and they can do fantastic work, but if you can't interface, then that's a big element that you're going to miss because the folks that are sitting in that jury, they're laymen, they're not experts. And so you have to explain it in a way that kind of makes it very easy for them to digest what these issues are and why you are correct in this case and why that they should support you in that space. So yeah, it's very different.
No, it is. And I just remember, just talking to you or just actually just listening to you talk about certain cases. And I, obviously as a contractor, I'd be just taking mental notes. All right, never do that.
Exactly.
That will get you sued. All right, please avoid that one. But you realize how much is on the line, and I just want to just talk about a little bit about the types of projects that you represent, and then we'll kind of go into a project that really kind of changed the game, right?
Yeah.
Which was that collapse in Surfside.
Yes.
But so some of the work that he does and he focuses on is high rise construction defects and stuff like that. So especially there was this project in Miami in Surfside that happened really recently, which is probably I think one of a handful in the U.S. buildings that actually collapsed due to structural issues that weren't addressed, and then they grew. So tell me a little bit about more in depth about that particular case. What was the findings in that particular case? And then how has it changed the game for you as a structural engineer?
So that unfortunate event has completely changed the entire look of the industry. So to kind of give you a little backstory, as engineers, we used to struggle with the issue of visiting a building and seeing that, okay, they've got some issues, they probably should address them. So you communicate with the board and you go, listen, guys, we found some, deterioration around the building. It could be concrete or whatever. And we recommend that you address these. And so what we could do is we'll evaluate the building, we'll quantify what the damages are, we'll develop some repair specs, and let's get a contractor here and let's fix it. Now, back before the collapse, the association boards, not all of them, but some of them, will kind of treat, the recommendations of an engineer the same way that you might treat, say you go to a doctor and the doctor's like, hey, we have to do surgery. And then, people say, well, get a second opinion. And so we were in this environment where these associations would be like, I'm going to get a second opinion. But that second opinion would turn into a third, a fourth, and a fifth until they found somebody that would say, it's okay for a few more years. You don't have to address it now. I mean, you can handle that in your next project or whatever. And unfortunately, that approach and not addressing the issues as they exist today, it kind of opens the door for real severe damages to take place. I like to equate concrete damage to almost like a cancer. Like when you see it, address it. Because the way that the damage spreads is not like a linear progression. It's not like, oh, well, 6 months from now, it's just going to get, no, it's more exponential. If you ignore it, it will get progressively worse. And I've seen cases where we've done an evaluation and it was probably a $200,000 repair project. And they opted, we're not going to do it. And then a year and a half later, they got $1.5 million repair project on their hands because it just grows so progressively. And so going back to Surfside, they were alerted that they had issues. And again, at that time, it was just this mentality of, I'll just get another opinion or we'll just kick that can down the road. This isn't a priority. I don't want to spend that money. The boards are in tough positions because if they elect to do these things and they don't have the reserves, then they have to assess the unit owners. And when you assess people, especially in a rough economy, then that's when you see torches and pitchforks. And they're kind of like, stuck between a rock and a hard place. But ultimately, their responsibility is the safety of the folks that live there. And so, unfortunately, not addressing these issues, the damage got so bad that eventually we saw, the outcome of it. And so once the tower went down, the state mandated all these new legislative requirements where it's kind of like two avenues. One, the main issue that they were finding is people recognize that they had work that they need to do in their building to protect it, but they didn't have the money to do it. And so that would prevent them from taking steps and doing it. So they introduced this structural integrity reserve study, which is mandated and required. And basically, not to get too deep into the weeds, but the state is saying you are required to fully fund your reserves for repair items related to structural conditions. And so that will mitigate, like, hey, well, we don't have the money. Well, you should legally. So now that's a legal requirement. The other aspect is forcing these older buildings to have assessments done. And so Miami-Dade and Broward already had a system in place. It was their building recertification program. So they had like a 40-year, 50-year. Essentially, every 10 years, you'd have your building assessed. And that was our existing system. But it wasn't really always, people weren't always following it. And so that became an issue. The state now has milestone requirements where the state now, not just these small counties, the entire state, is forcing assessment for these buildings that qualify. And so they're doing and taking measures to make sure that people address these issues so that we don't have another tragedy like that. There's still a lot of questions in some gray areas on how to do it and who qualifies. And I try to remind people when I talk with them that it's what the state is saying is the minimum requirement. So you don't be surprised if certain counties might take it a step further because there's liability everywhere. And they want to make sure that they're not liable. So, for example, Highland Beach, they have a milestone requirement, but they were forcing people to get it done before the deadline. And not only that, they weren't just doing structural, they were adding electrical components too. And so there's a lot of question marks coming from these associations and stuff. And I have to remind them that it's safety first. And it's better to go ahead and get these things done because the buildings that qualify, there's more buildings that are engineers that can do these inspections. And so get in early, get it scheduled, and knock it out. And don't be surprised, especially if it's an older building, if we recommend that you have to do some corrective action. Because again, if I see something, I have to report it. And so it's completely changed the landscape. It really has.
Yeah, so there's a massive real estate element attached to this, and it's really affecting the condo market. So it's good to hear it from your perspective because you understand that this is a life safety issue, right? And then the real estate market and the condo owners are looking at it more as it's a money issue, right? But
Correct.
this is also affecting transactions, especially in South Florida, and condos being more available now because of all of these assessments. But this is something that you cannot avoid. So if you understand that these buildings have to comply with these requirements, you're going to understand exactly what you're walking into if you choose to purchase a condo in the next few years
Yes.
in Florida.
Yes, I would say, especially for the folks listening, if you're interested in buying a condo, there are certain questions that in the past people just generally wouldn't ask, but I would 100% ask for a record of what their maintenance schedule has looked like. I want to know when the last time you painted your building. And it sounds trivial, but I tell all these boards this. I go, the reason why I ask about when the last time you painted your building, if you tell me that it's been 15 years, then I assume that you don't really maintain your building. Now, paint schedule generally falls between 7 to 10 years. That's when you want to do it. And I encourage people to adhere to that, because painting your building is the only time you take a look at every square inch of it. That's when you're going to be able to see all the gaps, all the locations where there could be a possible problem. So ask those questions if you're going to purchase a condo. The other thing I would ask for is if they've completed their milestone, and if you could see it. If you could see the most recent engineering report, that way you have an idea. Because a lot of times you get fall in love with the place, the location, and all of that. But what you don't want to do is purchase something and then find yourself kind of stuck. You're going in, you buy a property, and then 2 years later, they've got this massive, restoration project, and suddenly they're hitting their residents up for a $20,000 assessment fee. And that could crush people. So make sure you ask those questions and engage with an engineer if you have to get that information.
So what is the state's benchmark for reassessments? Is it 15 years? Is it 20? Is it 30? And because this is going to be an important question to ask, so if you're going into a condo purchase, what you're running into.
Yes. So it's been a moving target. There's been a few, updates and revisions to the bill that came out a few years back. So as it exists today, if I remember correctly, if you live within 3 miles of the coast and your building is 25 years or older, then you have to have your milestone inspection completed by December of 2024. So if you live beyond those 3 miles, then it's 30 years. If you got CO, and let's say you're 24 years, then by the end of this year, you would have to have it done. And so they've got it set by when you got your CO, and then they'll actually issue letters to the buildings. So you'll get a notice. And so, for example, I got a call yesterday from a lady down in Davie that has a building, and she says, "Hey, we received our notice. We have," she said, 90 days to complete an inspection, and then from that point, once the inspection is complete, we have 180 days to either initiate repairs and complete them, or request an extension for the repairs. And I believe the state gives you up to almost a year. It's 360 days to complete. So they will work with you. They're not trying to put you in a position where they just want to issue fines. Like, even in cases where you might be a little bit delinquent, I've written letters to building departments going, "Hey, I took a cursory look. It's fine to continue to be occupied. I will complete the inspection within a week, but for now, can we put a pause on any fines that you're considering to issue?" And I've never had a case where the building department came back and said, "No, we're going to fine them." So they want to work with you largely because there's a lot of buildings out there. They're inundated too, so it's very hard for them to kind of stay on top of everybody as well. So as long as you're making the right choices and showing you're making movements and getting it completed, then you're fine. If you're ignoring them, which I have seen, that's when you're gonna have an issue, because they will very quickly shut your building down.
What is a typical repair process looks like from the lens of an engineer in one of these tall condo buildings? Like, what are you looking for? What are you peeling back to tell you the whole story on what's going on structurally? I think this would be a good
yeah. So give you like a little background on like how reinforced concrete performs, because South Florida, everything down here basically is reinforced concrete. We deal with hurricanes, so you don't really see wood frame construction in South Florida. You get more in Central Florida, you see that. And so reinforced concrete, you obviously have your rebar in there, And because we live in a very saltwater-ish environment, especially if you're right on the beach, what we're looking for is what's called a spall. Basically, that salt water, it penetrates the concrete. A lot of people think like, oh, it's concrete, it's fine. It's very porous. It's basically a really hard sponge. And so those chlorides, they penetrate the concrete and they come in contact with the steel. And so that steel, once that chlorides hit, it turns into rust. And so that rust, that bar starts to expand. And when it expands, it causes the concrete to crack. And so if left unattended, these spalls could actually cause blowouts. And so when we go out and we do our assessments, you might see an engineer walking around with like a sounding tool or like a golf club. It could be as simple as a golf club. And you'll see them tapping around. And what we're looking for, or we're listening for, there's a hollow sound, and it's telling us like, oh, there's a spall here. I can see it crack. It looks like the concrete's kind of like ballooning up a little bit. And what we'll do is you cut that area out and you remove all of this loose concrete. When you open it, you just see a bunch of rust. And so what we'll do is you instruct the contractor to get a wire wheel and get all the rust off. And you can either use wire wheel, I've seen like sandblasting, as long as you get the bar clean and you kind of starting fresh. And what I like to do is I'll specify like a product, like a corrosion inhibitor, and I'll coat everything, the steel and everything with a corrosion inhibitor, because those chlorides, they'll still want to penetrate. And so when they do, I want to have some kind of protective layer in there. So that way it can resist the urge to like start to corrode. Once that's done, you form up and you pour your concrete back and you're good. And that's generally the typical repair, whether it's a beam, whether it's a column, whether you got a balcony. Generally, that's the process. Now, with balconies, and where it's unique, because that tends to be like the problem spots, they're exposed on all three sides. You've got exposure on the top, you got the face, and you got the bottom. And so you've got all these areas where these chlorides can penetrate. And so I always like to specify a waterproofing membrane to go over top. It just kind of acts as like a first layer of defense. And people are starting to get hip to it. And so like Aventura, for example, if you're doing any kind of balcony rework, they will now require you to waterproof it. And what it does is it extends the life. It does nothing but good things. So by adding a waterproofing membrane over top, it really adds another layer of resistance, better protects the building. So those are generally the types of repairs. Sometimes it's not necessarily due to the chloride penetration, but like in construction, things happen. They're not perfect. Maybe a bar is just sitting too close to the edge of the concrete. And so there's more exposure there. So you might see some corrosion there and it might get a little blowout. And you have to reset the bar. But generally, those are the concrete repairs that we run into.
Yeah, it's great to just expose people to what that looks like, and obviously the first time you hear it, you're not gonna fully understand what he's talking about. But later, if you are a condo owner and these things are coming up, you could kind of point back to, oh yeah, I did hear this, conversation on a podcast about what's required and what's needed. Right? You just want to be just the most informed as possible, especially if you are going to be purchasing a condo anytime soon in Florida. Or does this mainly affect more South Florida, or this is all of Florida? How does that work?
Yeah, this is all of Florida. Like we get calls for milestone inspections in Tampa. I know that they take place up in the Panhandle. We've done some building safety inspections in like Naples. It's really all throughout the state. Yeah, and for, I mean, it's obvious like just because these issues are located in South Florida, the same conditions are present in Pensacola or up in Daytona. It's really the same thing. So no matter where you are in the state, take these necessary steps. Make sure that you get yourself educated. Just because these things, it's not a matter of if they will happen. I mean, you could have a building that's 50 years old. It could be well maintained. These little things will pop up. And it's not something to be terrified about. It's just, you got to be proactive. We have to have boards that are proactive. You have to have property managers that are proactive and want to take care and address these things before they become major issues. So as an example, we have a project down in Aventura. It's 2 towers and a set of townhomes. And you could see based on the timeline, like they had a previous board that just kind of like put their head in the sand. And so now that we're down there, what probably would have been a very simple repair project, whole balconies are coming off. And so, and unfortunately, the people that live there, they're suffering from the decisions that were made by the boards in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And imagine like you're buying a condo, and let's say you have a really good board and management team and you're staying on top of things. Boards turn over. And so that's why it sounds corny, but you have to stay involved with, you know, your association and making sure that you have good people, because you can have a good board for a couple of years and then you get one in there that wants to kind of like put their head in the sand and ignore issues, and you might inherit a problem. You already live there.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, to be involved, be informed. I think that that's kind of the greatest thing. It takes work, and at times it can be quite annoying, but I mean, being proactive will actually save you a lot in the long run.
Would you say there's more of an advantage or less an advantage if you are, let's say, if you're in a 4-story tower versus a, you know, 15?
I would say that it doesn't necessarily depend on the size. I was in a property that was only 3 stories, and I actually had to red tag the building because they had significant issues.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not so much about size. It's just, you got to have people who are willing to have eyes and ears and to speak, to report things, and not be afraid of doing the uncomfortable thing and just going like, hey, we got to grit our teeth and get through it. I know these people are going to be upset. Construction is noisy. If you've never been in a building that has active work going on, you could be completely on the opposite side of the building and someone has a chipping hammer and it sounds like in the roof.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's annoying. But I would rather deal with that than look at some of the projects that we're dealing with down south that are huge, or worse yet, the tragedy that took place. I would rather deal with the noise. So just, I keep saying it, but you know, you gotta be active. You have to.
No, thank you. I think you shared a lot in regards to exactly what you do and the importance of it, and especially if you're purchasing a unit, what to look for. Definitely brought some fantastic value there. So I want to touch on. I mentioned that you are, you know, in my Bible study. So I want to say, how does your faith play into, you know, your business?
That's good. I like that question. So everybody looks at engineering as like, I just need this guy to come in, tell me what's wrong, tell me how to fix it. And even some engineers, it's like, I just need to crank out this report. I just need to, you know, I got to tell these people what they need to do. I need to direct this contractor what to do. And I need to get this project in, completed, and out. And I think that that's a really poor approach, especially because we deal with very sensitive, you know, projects. Like, these are people's homes. And so the way that I figured I could incorporate it is recognizing it's not so much about the engineering, it's the people first. You have got to connect with the people first. Everything is about person to person. And so, and that's both with our clients, and that's both with the employees.
Mm-hmm.
So how can I, as a leader in a company, or how can I, as the engineer on this project, knowing that maybe these people are going through a difficult time, they're about to go through this restoration project, there's concerns about money. How can I connect with them in a way and provide a service that's more than just engineering, and like actually help them navigate the steps through it? And both internally, what I call internal clients, like the employees, how can I be an effective leader for them and kind of help them grow as engineers and develop them? And it's all through service. Mm-hmm. Which, if you take a look at the faith, like our faith, everything throughout what Christ did, it was all about service. It's not about what you can do for me. It's like, what can I do for you? How can I make this difficult situation better for you? And it might be minimal. It might be very small, but I want to be able to do something.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with the employees. Like, I could very easily just say, hey, a new project came in. You're going to manage it. Go take care of it. Go do the inspections. And it's like, no, I want to be there. I want to be in the trenches with you. I remember earlier this year, we had some people out on vacation, and we had to do a water test up in West Palm. And they're like, Charles, I really hate to ask you this. Is there any way that you can come help us? And I was like, yeah, absolutely, let's go. So I get up there and I'm rigging up the equipment to do the spray test. And she was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm about to spray the window. And she was like, no, you don't have to do that. Let me do it. I was like, listen, you go in there, hold the pad.
Mm-hmm.
Let me know when to stop spraying. I don't want to flood the unit. Just tell me stop spraying. And she's like, you really don't have to do it. And I came in, and that day it was so hot, and we were facing east. And so I was drenched, and she was like, she kept apologizing. She's like, I'm so sorry to come do this. I'm so sorry. I was like, you don't understand. I have to do this.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to leave you out here high and dry.
Mm.
And I feel like by showing that it's more about people, it's also leading and showing by example. Like, this is how also, as you grow and eventually you have people on there, you serve them. You do the exact same thing. You put these other people first. This is how you conduct yourself on a project site. This is how you help these board members navigate. You make yourself available and you establish this real relationship, as opposed to, I'm just here to do a job and get out of here. Mm-hmm. And that's with anything. It doesn't have to be, just like with engineering. I mean, even outside of that, like being in a community, it's like if people actually took the time to connect, a lot of these divisive issues would mitigate. But we're so disconnected that we don't look at people as people.
Yeah.
We're communicating through screens and it's just text.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, there's no real connection there. And I mean, think of it this way, like let's say you're walking into a building, you're kind of side by side by somebody and you're about to both enter. It's not uncommon for you to be like, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, after you.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with that. Now, how many times have you seen in a merge lane, you're in a car? You're just jockeying, man. You're just jockeying to get in. And it's like, you want to know why? It's just a car. That's not a person. That's just a car. No, me first. We've got to get connected. And this Bible study, what we talk a lot, is just like, it's service and connection. And that's really the main thing that I want to try and incorporate into like the ethos of like what Marcon is. Mm-hmm. Because by doing that, not only will, the folks that I work with they're just so happy. It's just a great place to work, great environment, and it allows for a great work product.
Yeah. No, I agree.
So it's just the best approach. And I think that service is just so easy to do. And it's implementing God's word without having to scream, hey, we're doing a godly thing.
Correct. I completely agree with you. And you touched on a few things. That merging of the car thing happened to me today. Oh my God. And my lane was, they had the arrow or whatever. And then there was this guy in the truck, in this right lane. He said, I'm not letting you in. I got squeezed so much. I was just kind of like, dude, it's one car lane. It's one car. Go, just go. You got it. It's not that serious. But yes, you're exactly right. And Christ was definitely the first, servant leader.
Correct.
And, for me in construction, I've always been a stickler about a clean job site. So, I come in, I check in on the guys, see where they're at and doing and stuff like that. If there's a mess, I pick up that broom and I'm just, I'm making sure my site, I didn't create the mess, but I'm making sure that it's dusty, it's flying around. I sweep it up, throw it in the trash. I make sure that the site is nice and maintained and nothing is below or beneath me. You know what I'm saying? That's that service aspect. And people see that. People could see that and draw from that and be like, hey, listen, this dude really cares, right? Yes. So it's definitely an important aspect. And if more professionals and owners and incorporate these principles into it, they'll get better employees. I mean, because another thing that you had touched on is we're doing life with people, right? And it's not a number. Yes, they're an employee. You're not allowed to talk to them any type of way. Mm-hmm. Yes, we do have a job to do, but at the same time, people are people. You got to make sure that you are a representation of that. So definitely some great nuggets there. So before you go, I wanted to ask you, what is your best lessons learned from life and in business?
Oh man, I gotta say, if I had to pick one thing, it's trust in God and then trust yourself. Like I had through the path of like kind of going from job to job and jumping into the business thing, there were always a lot of question marks about like what the next step would look like. And you have these goals and these aspirations in mind, and I can name so many situations where I felt like I was stuck and I wasn't getting the movement that I wanted. And it's partly because we kind of live in a microwave society. Like we want instant, like right now, right now, right now. And like I said earlier, I'm competitive. So when I have a goal in mind, I want to jump straight from A to Z. And what I need to do is trust first that God's saying, like, well, Z, yeah, I hear you want to get to Z, but we got to do B. We got to talk about B first. And there were so many, like I said, so many positions where I felt like I was just stuck. And I didn't recognize that I wasn't stuck. Like I needed to trust him that there was something I needed to take away from this. I was in this position for a reason, and it's trying to draw something out of me. And if I can name so many different circumstances and situations where maybe the thing that he wanted to draw out of me was just patience. Maybe it was self-discipline. And then when I finally saw the opportunity to like kind of launch something to start the business, I was kind of like deer in the headlights. I mean, you remember, man, I was like, suddenly all that confidence, you start second guessing, like, oh shoot, like I got family, I got kids, like I got,
yeah.
And you're like, but the skills are there. You do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I wasn't trusting him. I wasn't trusting myself.
Yep.
What I was doing was I was actually preventing this. And I know if I was having a conversation with Christ, he was right there. He'd be like, "You've been begging for it."
I know.
And now here it is.
Yeah.
Like, and now you're going to question. Now you're questioning. You were talking all that smoke earlier about give it to me, give it to me, give it to me.
Yes.
And now you are, and now you act listen. And
yeah.
now are you not trusting me? And like when I took the leap and I realized that all of those years and all of the soft and hard skills that were being developed and how the character was being molded and changed and realizing that the more that I did rely on him, that the more that I could just and approach these new avenues with peace and clarity, like with real clarity, like it just wasn't murky anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I think I got it now. And so if you're in that same position, I'd say you could be in a spot where you're like, I just don't feel like I'm accomplishing things. It's like, no, every day you are taking something away.
For sure.
Every day. And you might not see it and you might not recognize it, but you got to look at every day as how am I going to be incrementally better than the day before? And I'm not talking about like, well, I'm making more money today. It's like, no, like character-wise, like how am I going to be incrementally better? Because that's what he wants. Like this is a battleground, man.
Yeah,
we're
sure.
trying to be certified at it, and we're going to be challenged daily. So trusting in him, and then when these skills start getting developed, how to use them and maximize the potential, because he made us for a purpose. So like, how do I maximize myself? And I have to trust him, and I have to trust that he's done a work in me, and I'm going to use these skills that he gave me. Yeah. So that would probably be the biggest thing that, like, as a daily driver, like, I can't tell you what 10 years from now is going to look like.
Correct.
But I do know that I have a system, and that system is he's guiding. I'm going to trust it.
Yep.
And because he's doing the work in me, whatever skills he's developing, I'm going to trust those skills. I'm going to use them. And maybe it's engineering. Maybe I'll be selling used cars in 10 years. I don't know, but that's not what we worry about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm about that. So it's okay.
No,
so that's the nugget.
That's a great nugget. I remember my partner now, he told me about this book, and it was called No Can Do. He's like, Sam, you know your stuff. Yeah. You know plenty, right? But you got to access that relationship, and you got to access, the scripture to give you a guide. But you could trust yourself after you know that you're in proper alignment, All right. So thank you for dropping that nugget. Thank you for dropping all of those nuggets in pertaining to structural defects and condo construction. So just wanted to say appreciate you coming on, and have a great day.
Yes, brother. Love you, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate you. And this was awesome. Can't wait to connect again too.
No, for sure.
All right, buddy.